hope that you are doing great. Neil is joining right now. Hello from Brazil. Nice to see you guys. We have an international audience. Hello, hello, hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing phenomenal. I'm doing phenomenal. How are you doing, Neil?
I'm doing great. How's life?
That's life is perfect. Coronavirus gave us both choices. We could make the most out of the situation or we could despair. I chose the first one. And from what I have been seeing from you on social media, on YouTube, on LinkedIn, on your blog, you have definitely chosen to be as productive as ever.
I'm trying, so it's tough, but you get used to it.
Yeah.
Actually, in reality, it's not that tough. I used to always work from home anyways, but the hard part is I have a baby now, so that's the part that
Yeah.
makes it tough. Or not really a baby, she's almost 2, but running around.
Congratulations. Yeah.
Thank you. She loves being on my Zoom calls. Whenever I have a Zoom call, she like pokes her head into the laptop, being like, "Hey," she's like, "Hi." So I don't mind.
That's great. And for most of our audiences, I know for a fact that my audience is primarily consistent of freelancers as well as business owners. We used to work from home, as you said, but there definitely have been some changes in the overall work economy. And this is actually one of the first questions which I wanted to ask you. How do you see the pandemic impacting digital marketing and the world in general?
Yeah, so first off, with the pandemic, there's been a big boom on anything internet based. It's convenient, it's you can get it delivered to you, you don't have to worry about COVID. And what you'll end up seeing in the future as well is because people are starting to order off of Amazon, people who have
Yeah.
never ordered before, like my parents or people who are older, who have ordered online sites now, right? Like they're ordering from e-commerce sites, they're getting used to it. They're seeing how it actually can be cheaper and more convenient than even going to the store. So post COVID, what you're going to see is a lot of people continuing with online commerce, which is going to increase the demand for digital marketing, but it's also going to increase how competitive digital marketing is as well, which means you're going to have to spend more money, spend more time, more resources to get the same results that you were getting before.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
And that point of view is extremely important because I talk a lot about habits in content marketing specifically and how important it is to build habit with your audiences. So those first customers of Amazon, those first customers of the e-commerce spaces are now starting to build those habits, which until the pandemic happened, they didn't have a reason to. Everyone could go to a supermarket and pick up the tools that they needed. So I'm super big fan of the fact that you are attributing that to the pandemic as well, because there has been a huge influx of new viewers on social media platforms. Content marketing is being consumed more than ever. And this is bringing in new fresh blood to these platforms, to these e-commerce stores, which hopefully when the pandemic actually is over, we don't know for sure when that is going to be happening, but hopefully those new boots, those fresh boots are going to remain, because in my point of view, and I'd love to hear your opinion about that as well, content marketing right now is at its peak. But for me, after the pandemic is over, it definitely should have some kind of correction going on. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, when you look at content marketing, the stats are pretty basic, in which there's over 1 billion blogs and there's roughly 7 billion people in this world. So you have roughly one blog for every 7 people. That's a lot of content. And then you have TikTok, you have LinkedIn, you have Clubhouse, you have Instagram. The number of social platforms out there has continually been increasing. People are now repurposing content, continually trying to build an audience. There's so much noise in the marketplace that it's harder to stand out. No matter what you're doing, you can jump over Lamborghinis. And if you're jumping over Lamborghinis and it used to go viral on YouTube, everyone's jumping over Lamborghinis right now, and it doesn't go that viral anymore. The point I'm trying to make is there is a lot of content, and there'll continually be more content. And even though people are producing content at mass scale, I personally don't see it actually decreasing over time. What I do see is people struggling to stand out.
Yeah.
So you're going to see more noise. And even if more content is being produced, you're not going to see as much content stand out, or you're not going to notice much. And you're going to have, just like, how you have banner blindness, you see banner ads so often you tend to ignore them. you'll start doing similar things with content. And there's a lot of tools that are coming up which AI is helping you create content. So it's actually becoming easier to create it. There's tools like Canva that help you create the visual images even quicker. So it's just going to cause more people to create even more content. But again, I believe people are going to have quote unquote content blindness, similar to banner blindness, in which they're going to ignore most of the content.
Yeah, I completely agree. This is something which has been happening to radio, later to TV, and now with content marketing in the current digital landscape. I personally am a big fan of your whole social media presence. I consume your content. As mentioned, I began years ago through your blog, through your first 10,000 word blogs. These were groundbreaking at the time. I then started following you on YouTube, on Instagram as well. And I've been seeing you implement new trends, such as, for example, carousels on Instagram. So I wanted to get a few specific trends which you believe that in 2021 are really helping creators stand out on social media. As mentioned, carousels are definitely one of them. What other ways of content delivery are you experimenting with in your social media strategy?
There's two big ones. So one is lives like this. Think about doing a podcast interview, but on Facebook. And you can use the streaming platforms to go live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, and you can do an interview everywhere at the same time, which can help you grow quicker. The second content format that I'm experimenting with is Reels. Okay, so everyone has a different version of Reel. Shorts, there's TikTok, right?
Yeah.
It's going to vary per platform, but the content is pretty much the same. If you create these quote unquote Reels, what ends up happening is the people who see that content can be more than just your followers. So it's another easy way to grow.
Yeah. And actually, Pinterest recently launched their story pins. Not sure if you have heard about them, but they are basically the same kind of format, such as Reels, but they enable you to create story pins, which are up to 20 pages long. So you can combine your Reels, and they're super, super powerful for organic reach as well. So anyone looking to repurpose their TikToks, their Reels, their YouTube Shorts, Pinterest story pins are definitely a viable option as well.
Yep. And it's funny, not too many people talk about Pinterest. Pinterest is one of the best sites if you're in e-commerce and you're trying to generate sales.
I super much agree with you on this, because Pinterest as a social media platform is quite kind of basic. The interactions that you might have with your audience on Instagram, let's say, or on Twitter, cannot be matched with the interactions that you can have on Pinterest. But people forget that Pinterest is search focused. So if you create content for Pinterest, you're basically ranking up on Google in one way or another as well. So this is super, super powerful and important to remember. I got a lot of questions both from Instagram and YouTube about people wanting to learn digital marketing as beginners. And you as well have been a beginner. I wanted to get your perspective on how can someone learn digital marketing in 2021?
The easiest way to learn digital marketing is just go and do it. Create your own website. Go start a WordPress website. You can do it for free at wordpress.com, or you can buy your own domain name and pop up like a site on DreamHost and crank something out. And just try to learn and market your own site. Go read sites, whether it's mine at neilpatel.com or someone else's, that's fine. And just go and try to market your own site and get traffic. The best way of learning is just doing it yourself. It's just not, you can read all you want, but if you don't actually implement, it's not going to take you that far.
And I've experienced this personally in my journey. In the first few years when I began gaining knowledge, I actually started obsessing about how many books I read, how many videos I watched, etc. By the way, your book at the time was something I binge read. But until I actually started implementing the techniques that you and others began talking about, and not only gaining knowledge, but also gaining experience, my growth was stagnant. So I definitely recommend what you said even more. Gain knowledge, gain the fundamentals. That can be done in 1-2 days, but then start implementing, start learning at the same time and implementing at the same time. That way you will end up with not only knowledge, not something you can read at books, but experience, something you can charge money for as well.
Yep. No, it's all about implementation and execution. And, what I always tell people is you can go read as much as you want, but going practicing it is totally different. And when what you read and what you practice, what you'll find is it doesn't always work. So you need to go experiment, tweak, test, and figure out how to actually execute and make it work for you.
Yeah, especially in our space in which everything is developing so freaking fast. So you might have read something on the book about social media marketing, about growth marketing last year, and this year it is not implementable anymore. And on
No,
this top, yeah,
because of
go
the
ahead.
algorithm changes.
Yeah,
You
everything is
go
changing.
implement something, and then you read this book that's a year old, and it's like, oh yeah, by the way, Google does around 9 algorithm changes per day. Good luck on reading that book that's a year old. Or you end up, reading this book on how to get started with social media marketing. Oh yeah, the book didn't talk about Instagram Reels and going live or all this kind of stuff because those features didn't exist back then.
Yeah. On this topic, I really want you to pick your brain on what are the resources that you currently are utilizing in order to stay on the frontier of digital marketing. Are you consuming primarily books? Do you have a favorite book of yours which you use for inspiration? How do you draw out information for yourself?
I read a lot of blogs more than books because they tend to be more up to date, and then I do a ton of experimentation.
Great, straight to the point answer. Do you have any book suggestions for our audience?
Most of the books that I've read have nothing to do with marketing.
No, I meant, do you have any book suggestions? So some of the books that you are reading.
Oh, I keep up with Search Engine Land, Search Engine Journal, Moz, Backlinko. But yeah, those are the main blogs that I'm keeping up to date with. And then the other thing I do is track all your competitors and see what they're doing and see what kind of content they're pushing out. And it'll give you ideas. The other thing to do is continually look out for your competitions on podcast interviews. A lot of times they spill their beans on how they're growing or what tactics they're doing, and listen to that because it'll give you ideas as well.
Yeah, and you actually did that in this live video as well, mentioning that you are experimenting with reels, with IG videos. So here, guys, if you want to become the next new Patel, you already have the information.
And don't
But
shoot to be me. Shoot to be better than me. I'm not the best, or I still have a lot to learn. You can, be yourself. Don't try to be someone else, and you can do better than I am or anyone else is. You just got to be consistent and put in a lot of the time and energy into it.
amen, amen. And on the topic of consistency, we all know that consistency is super important. That's why I wanted to really understand your early journey. Do you remember when you had your first breakout? Do you remember how much time you had to actually hustle before that happened? Talk to us a little bit about your journey in the beginning.
There was no first breakout. There was continually grinding, continually making mistakes, and eventually you get to where you want by just a lot of little things that add up. Most people believe that there's this moment, this catalyst that causes someone to be successful. It usually isn't. Even with business, personal brands, it doesn't matter what you're doing. What a lot of it ends up being is it's a lot of little things that help you get to where you want to be. That's the reality of the situation.
And that's definitely something that a lot of people miss out on their journey. This is something which I actually have implemented for Instagram as well. It's compound growth. In the beginning, when you're just starting out, everything is difficult. Writing a post is difficult. Finding the right tool to schedule your post is difficult. Interacting with your audience is difficult. Finding ideas for your post is difficult. But the more you do it, the more you practice and practice daily, because that's the best way to build habits, the easier it gets. And at the same time, the easier it gets, the more you grow. And there is a point, a break even point, in which most people usually give up. And that's right before they break out in terms of getting the fundamentals and the difficulty curve going down, and right before their growth actually starts picking up and they start seeing results. Because social media, digital marketing, when you start seeing results, when you start reaffirming your vision, it gets easier. You know that people are liking what you put out, and that keeps you motivated. But before that moment, before everything clicks in terms of you nailing down your processes, it is hard, and it is supposed to be hard. Earlier in this discussion, we talked about market saturation. Market saturation, the reality of it is the more content is being pushed out, the more the markets are being saturated, and content isn't going to be stopped in terms of being pushed out. Yes, you can take advantage of Pinterest storyboards, which are still new. Yes, you can take advantage of LinkedIn organic reach, Clubhouse, etc. But these things are going to fade away. So you need to find what makes you unique. For example, in your case, I vividly remember the first time I read one of your 10,000 word blog posts. And at that moment, I was, whoa, why didn't anyone think of it earlier? And the same principle will apply for everything else in the digital marketing world. You just have to practice. Because I'm sure that if you didn't practice your craft daily, these 10,000 word blog posts weren't going to happen.
Yeah, and over time, what's funny is as I started writing those 10,000 word blog posts, other people started copying over time as they started seeing results. So then you got to keep coming up with new stuff, because then it ends up becoming Me Too content. Even if you're one of the first people to do it, it still ends up becoming Me Too content. You got to continually find ways to stand out, experiment, test, tweak. And that really is the key to marketing.
Yeah, yeah. As you said, everything is going to become old at some point, especially in our industry, in which trends are happening not by months, not by years, but in terms of days. So if you miss out on the latest event, guess what? Your opportunity has already vanished. So keep experimenting, even when you think you've made it. This is, at least for me, the biggest takeaway.
Yep.
I have a couple more questions before we dive into the Q&A. So if anyone in the chat right now has any question for you or me, make sure you leave it in the chat box or in the comment section. Having said that, I know that the majority of at least my audience is in their early 20s, maybe 30s. If you have any advice for yourself, if you could go back in time and speak to your 20-year-old self, what advice would you give him and why?
I would tell them to focus. When I was 20 years old, I had ADD. I tried doing way too many things. I should have just focused. And if I stuck with marketing and I stuck with just practicing and helping them with their marketing versus trying to do too many companies, I would have had one company that was much bigger, much larger, doing much better. But I didn't do that. I had ADD. I would, people would tell me about a really cool idea like, hey, we should end up creating Invisalign through 3D printers, or we should do some random stuff, and be like, cool, let me give you some money, or let me try that. I should have just focused my energy and my efforts.
And there is actually a great quote from my native language. It says, from two chairs on the ground. Basically, if you try to multitask, if you try too many things, your focus is going to be diverted and you're going to be ending up with nothing. So this is something which a lot of people, especially in the social media marketing world, should not take for granted. Yes, you can repurpose content. Yes, you can be on multiple places at the same time and grow simultaneously. But unless you have those processes set in place, you're going to struggle with multiple social media platforms. That's why, at least for me, the winning strategy is first nail one platform, and then when you have the processes, the knowledge, when the difficulty has gone down, then try to repurpose on different platforms. What's your take on this? I'm really curious to know, do you still manage a large portion of your social media presence yourself? Do you have a team? What are your processes surrounding that?
Yeah, so I have a team that helps me with my social media profiles and managing them. I need to do a better job of creating content. Sometimes I focus too much on the business and I don't create enough content. That's the biggest thing that my team complains about, and they have all right to. In addition to that, the way I look at social media is just create content and just push it on all the networks, and they'll take it, and whatever does well, do more of it. Whatever doesn't do well, throw it away and try other stuff. It really is that simple with social media. The biggest thing I always tell people too is don't try to go viral. The other day I was talking to a friend and he's like, how many video views do you have? And I'm like, I have 37 million video views and I did it without going viral. And I was like, it's just consistency. You keep creating content, you keep pushing it out there on the social platforms, you'll keep doing well. And people are gunning for that. Let me just create that one hit wonder and get lucky. And I'm like, that's not in your control. But what is in your control is consistency, hard work, and just doing it for a very, very long time.
And even if you go viral, there is another point of view to that whole scenario. Going viral is actually, in my opinion, a double-edged sword, because every single time that you go viral, then you have an expectation that your next post should go viral as well. Or you start comparing your own posts, which didn't go viral, and start thinking to yourself, oh, damn, that post should have gone more views. And just as you said, in a lot of times, digital marketing, social media marketing, there are a lot of factors that we can attribute to. There are a lot of factors that we can predict, but a post going viral is often unpredictable. So just focusing on what you can control, focusing on what is in your immediate area of control is the best strategy. Being consistent is definitely one of these elements. And yes, as cliche as it might sound, this is something which Neil has practiced. This is something which got him 37 million video views, and I'm sure a lot more link clicks on his blog. And there is a reason for that. I wanted to follow up with a question which is a bit more technical. If there was one change that you could make to Google or any social media platform which would improve your quality of life, what would that change be and why?
I would limit how much time people are allowed to spend on these platforms. I see people all around this world who go places, more so pre-COVID, and they'll be in places like New York City and Central Park, and they'll spend an hour trying to take the perfect picture of themselves or selfie of themselves instead of just enjoying the moment. Life is more than just capturing it on social media for other people. Enjoy life for what it is. And I think that's a big mistake that way too many people make. And it's like, enjoy it. Life isn't about capturing it for Instagram and getting 1 million likes. Life is for living it. And there's nothing wrong with social media and using it, but limit your time on it. You don't need to spend 10 hours a day or 5 hours a day on Instagram. Like, it's not going to help you get where you want by spending that much time on Instagram. Like, go and execute.
This is something which, at least for me, as someone who is really deep in the social media marketing world, might sound counteractive. But the reality is that in the beginning of my journey, I was the same way. I was studying, I was being on social media, I was procrastinating by trying to learn from others, by consuming educational content. But just as you mentioned, being 5 hours on Instagram and wasting your time won't get you to the places in which you want to be. There are actually a few great apps that people can utilize in order to limit their time. This, for me, as soon as I realized first how much dopamine I was releasing through social media and how bad that was for everything else basically in my life, I installed immediately. Your Hour is a great app for Android. And if you are on an iOS device such as myself, you can utilize the inbuilt functionality to limit your time on social media. And as Neil said, focus on what is important.
Yep.
So I think that we can cover a few more questions before we dive into the audience questions. One of them was, what are your priorities for 2021? What is the one goal that you want to achieve and you'd be quite happy if you did in 2021?
I don't have goals like that. I don't do annual goals where I'm like, I'm going to hit this, or New Year's resolutions or anything like that. I operate my businesses a month at a time. And every month I set goals and we need to try to achieve them and do whatever it takes. And then I break down what I need to do on a task basis from a daily basis to achieve those goals. And that's how we operate things. Personal goals, I don't really have too much other than make sure I spend time with my family, enjoy life, which I tend to do on a regular basis. But I don't live life based on New Year's resolutions or annual goals. It's really hard to achieve something that you're doing on an annual basis.
Yeah.
It's much easier to figure out what you want to achieve on a monthly basis and go from there.
Yeah, because you can reverse engineer everything. For example, on Instagram, if you have a monthly goal of 10,000 followers, you can then ask yourself, okay, how many followers do I need to generate per day? And that can give you information that you can track and be way more flexible, other than saying, I want 100,000 followers this year.
Yeah, well, you can also figure out if your goals are realistic. If you're looking to get 100,000 more followers and you're like, you know what, this month I want 10,000 followers, well, you can try posting certain content types. If you're not getting more followers from it, then you need to go back to the drawing board and you know you're not going to hit it. It's useless to go create this big lofty goal that you want to achieve at the end of the year. It's not just about reversing it out. It's about experimenting and trying things out to figure out what's going to work for you and what's not. So then way you can adjust and be realistic. And that's why I always recommend people to start having monthly goals instead of annual goals.
Yeah. And something which I personally recommend to my audience is utilizing your A/B testing calculator, which you have set on newpatel.com. And whenever they're making any change, either in their social media content or in their social media profiles, Instagram, for example, track your profile visits, track your traffic before and after the change, and then go to your A/B testing calculator and figure out if it was even statistically relevant or not, or if by doing this change, your conversion rate improved. So thank you so much for providing this free tool for us. I recommend it almost daily to my audience, and it helps out a lot.
No problem. Appreciate you, using it, and and everyone here for trying to use my free stuff, or even reading the blog, or even taking the time to be on Instagram this morning. You guys didn't have to be here, so we do appreciate it. You could have been doing something else.
On the topic of being grateful and keeping your mental state healthy as a content creator, do you have any habits that you practice that help you get through the stress of business, running a social media presence, being a personal brand?
I don't, but I have this motto in life that helps keep me grounded and grateful. When things are going great for you, just remember someone else has it someone out there has it better than you. And when things are going really bad for you, just remember someone out there has it much worse than you. And that helps keep you really grounded, because a lot of times we don't just appreciate what we have. Like, I can say, someone's struggling here. There's people in Africa that are struggling way more than we are in the United States. Or if I say, look at me, I'm doing all this stuff, that's great. Elon Musk and Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg and the list goes on and on are crushing and doing way better than me. And I just try to be realistic. I try not to have too many ups and downs, and appreciate where I am in life, and I appreciate other people. And if you can appreciate that and you appreciate life for what it is, then I think you're good. And it was funny, I was talking the other day to my wife. My daughter's really young. I'm trying to teach her as a young kid that, don't judge people. She's still young, she won't understand, but one of my friends ended up doing this, and this is how I got it. Her daughter's older, and what she did is, her daughter's in school now, and she taught her that don't judge people based on the color of their skin or how smart they are, anything like that. Judge them for how good of a person they are. And if there's something wrong with them and they're mean and rude and they're cruel and they're bullying or whatnot, don't be mean back. Kill them with kindness, because there's something wrong that happened maybe in their life that's causing them to be like that way. So I just try to appreciate everything for what it is and just be grateful.
There's always more to the picture than there is. Even in your case, for example, people might come and see how successful you are on social media, how much you have done in life, how your business is prospering, but they don't see the big picture. Yes, go ahead.
No, I'm a normal person. Look, I flipped over a camera. This is my living room, straight up. Just toys, books everywhere. My house is much more messy than that. Not that my wife and I aren't clean. It's just more so we got a kid. We're realistic. My life isn't based out of a magazine. I'm not driving fancy cars. We have a Honda Odyssey minivan that you put kids in. It's like I live a normal life.
So this is exactly what is super important on social media, because we are encapsulated in our own bubbles. Everything around us, as you mentioned in the beginning of this live session, people jumping over Lamborghinis, watching our friends get married, watching people get more likes on their content. This is basically creating a bubble around us. Yes?
Yeah, no, and the worst is people showing off and thinking they're the richest person in the world. And if that makes you happy, go and do it. But life isn't about making money. That's not the only thing. I always tell people, if you're going to do something to make money, then you're going to be miserable for the rest of your life. What's the point of, living that kind of life? Go do something that makes you happy. It's not about, are you flying in private jets or you have a Lamborghini or any of that. Just go and enjoy life for what it is and be happy with it.
And were you always with this specific mentality according to money in general? Because for me personally, I adopted this mentality as soon as I was hospitalized for overworking. So at my first year of college, I was at the same time running a business. I was at the same time doing internships, etc. And I actually ended up in hospital. And for me, then it clicked.
I'm happy you're okay
go ahead.
now. I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm happy you're okay now.
Thank you.
But yeah, no, I've had this mentality for a long time, but I also didn't come from much. And I'm not saying that because I want anyone to feel sorry for me. Well, my life wasn't bad at all, but my first job was cleaning toilets and picking up trash at a theme park. So it wasn't fun. Sometimes you would pick up bags of trash and all the trash would spill on you, or you would have to sweep up vomit. But it's life, so I just tend to appreciate it for what it is. And I've seen some of the bad, not all. There's people who have seen much worse than me and dealt with way worse conditions than I have. Like I said, my life wasn't bad at all. It was pretty peachy, and my parents worked their tails off just to take care of my sister and I. But I've always had the mentality that money isn't everything in life, and you should just enjoy it for what it is. I sadly do work tons of hours. So I'm the little bit opposite, where I'll work 12-hour days, 7 days a week, and I won't stop. But I think that's just how I'm built, and I like it. It's my adrenaline rush. But not everyone's like that. You got to figure out what works for you and go do that.
Yeah, and at different points of your life, one thing might be appropriate, so another might not be. For
Yep.
example, I used to be the same way, and I currently am preparing to launch my first digital product utilizing some of your guides, so I am the same way currently. But I know that this for me isn't sustainable. Yes, I enjoy working. Yes, I enjoy creating content, but at the same time, I'm trying to be mindful of my own body. I'm trying to be mindful of my own mental state because at the end of the day, it doesn't make sense for you to push yourself, as mentioned, if this isn't for you, into doing something and emulating a model, if you're going to be burning out in 30 days. The goal, at least for me in social media marketing, is to be here in 300 days, in 3,000 days, and building something which is sustainable over the long term, rather than getting caught up in the get rich quick schemes and buying followers and trying to portray yourself on social media for someone when in reality you are someone else.
No, spot on.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Neil. It is such a pleasure discussing with you not only about digital marketing, but life in general. I would like to hand over this live session and give control to our audiences because I see that the comment section is exploding. Thank you so much for everyone who stick through this interview with us. We are going to be answering some of your questions right now. So as mentioned, if you have a question for us, make sure you leave it and we are going to be covering them. So let's get started right now. I have a question by Seema, which I am popping up. Do you feel any one platform has potential over the others right now?
LinkedIn does extremely well. Very small percentage in the single digit percentile of their user base is creating content, majority don't. So if you do create content, you'll get tons of likes and shares, whether it's B2B or B2C. Add your content on LinkedIn. The biggest opportunity, Seema, is to just take your content, repurpose it everywhere, not just on LinkedIn, but everywhere, because might as well get as many views as you can from the same videos or same images or same text or content or whatever it may be.
Yeah, and I'm doing this personally with my carousels, and they're freaking exploding on LinkedIn. I am getting those notifications your post has been in the 1% of engagement, when in reality that post wasn't anything special for, let's say, a platform such as Instagram, which is booming with this kind of content. What is your favorite content format, by the way?
My favorite content format is blog posts. I like them. It continually produces traffic even after it gets older. When you post social content, it tends not to perform well in the long run because you get a big boost of likes and interactions, but a year from now, no one sees that content. Unlike blogging, people continually see that content. My second favorite format is videos. I think videos are huge because you can upload them everywhere. People can find them by searching on places like YouTube, and you can keep getting traffic from it.
That's a great answer, and no surprise here that you are crushing YouTube, which is basically combining evergreen content such as blog posts and then giving that searchability of the videos and that relatability as well. Because for people, we base our impressions of someone based on the touch points that we make. So for example, right now you could have been making, let's say, a blog post, but then people have only one way of gathering your thoughts, and that's through the words you're making. But during this live, your intonation, your body language, the fact that you flipped your camera and showed us your living room, these are all making impressions in ourselves which are super, super strong. By the way, have you experimented recently with, because we discussed how we can pivot and how we can improve our content, what is the recent experimentation that you have been making in your blog posts?
So I have this formula that's been working really well, in which 40% of the time I create beginner content being like how to tie a tie, how to install a toilet, stuff like that. I know that's extremely beginner, but that's the stuff that people are searching for, but it doesn't create tons of social shares and it doesn't create tons of backlinks. 10% of the time I'm creating advanced content with stats, data that shows me as an expert, stuff that'll get a lot of social shares, backlinks, but doesn't generate that many links. Then 20% of the time, I'm focusing on rewriting older articles. I go into Google Search Console, I see the older articles, and I take my last 30 days compared to the previous 30 days of the last year. So I'm comparing my last 30 days to the last year during the same time period, in essence. And I'm seeing which content generated more traffic back then than it does now. And I look at that content pieces and I see my competitors' ones and I rewrite mine and try to make it way better than theirs. So that way I can get more traffic to my older articles. And then I do that 20% time. And 30% time, which gets me to 100%, I go and I promote my content, hitting up people on social media, asking them to share my content, offering to share their content, emailing people I link out to, asking them to share my content. But like processes like that just really help get more traffic.
This is actually something quite similar to what I'm doing on social media, but I am implementing a more basic formula. I'm doing 80-20. For growing accounts, 80% focus on content which is going to be getting your attention. So for example, Reels, great format for getting attention, single images, something which is easy to consume. And then 20% of the time focus on the things which are going to be, as you mentioned, getting you those shares, positioning you as an expert, and getting you those clients as well.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move to the questions. There is a question about the newest social media platform, which is Clubhouse. Have you played around with Clubhouse? What are your topics on? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I played around with Clubhouse. Not the biggest fan. There's nothing wrong with being on it. It's a good platform. But what I don't like about Clubhouse is to do well, you have to be on the platform. What I mean by that is if I post an image on Instagram, if I log off after a day or two, I can still get likes and engagements and get more followers. Clubhouse, you only grow when you're on Clubhouse. People don't have time to be on Clubhouse 5 hours a day. And the ones who are, well, eventually you're going to have to change that because you got to work on your business at the same time.
Yeah. And for me personally, Clubhouse, yes, it has caught on some of the trends that we in the pandemic are needing, for example, conversations, but at the same time, there is nothing stopping Twitter, Instagram doing the same, and they have actually started implementing these content formats. So for me, Clubhouse is based on gimmicks. It is a great platform for making connections, but you should take advantage of it right now, or in my opinion, forget about it.
Yep.
Do you consider yourself a perfectionist, by the way?
No, I'm big
Okay.
on something out there, improve it, tweak it, and learn.
Because there was a question about how does someone overcome perfectionism when it comes down to content. For me, the thing which helped me overcome it personally was posting every day. You don't have time to be a perfectionist when you have to create carousels every single day. So for me, getting into that habit was more important than getting perfect, because at the end of the day, perfectionism and being perfect is subjective as well.
Yeah, perfection is the eye of the beholder. So what is perfect to you may not be perfect to someone else. So just get it out there.
Amen. So I'm preparing another question, and I actually stumbled upon this one. Is it good opinion to invest in a good skill, and what is that skill in your opinion for 2021? So which is the best skill to invest in 2021?
If I had to pick a skill, it would be anything related to marketing. If I had to pick a skill, it would be anything related to podcasting. So according to Salesforce, the average podcast listener has a higher income, which means that traffic is potentially worth more. Podcasting isn't that competitive. There's barely any podcasts out there on the internet. So if you want to do extremely well, create some podcasts. You can get a big audience really fast. It's not competitive. It's blowing up all around the world. It's an easy way to have a massive audience and grow and make quite a bit of money in the future.
And go check
This is the
out the podcast that New has as well. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and this is the time to get into podcasting.
What are some of the results that you can share from your own podcast? I know that you guys experimented with some pretty unique marketing campaigns when promoting your podcast for that 1 million download, for example. Tell us a
Yeah.
little bit more about how can one start a podcast right now.
Yeah, the way you can start a podcast right now is you go and you send out a blast to your email list, push notifications, share it on the social web, ask people to subscribe. And then during each episode, ask people to rate, review the podcast. That helps. And also tell them to share it and tell other people about the podcast. We did this thing where if we got more downloads and more listens, 1 million, we'll do a free in-person event. And so it's like you just got to tell people, hey, if you do this, I'll give you Y. And hopefully that why on what you give them is big enough where it'll encourage them to share and push around your podcast.
Yeah, motivate them, give them something that they want and make it a win-win situation.
Yep.
As mentioned, New has a podcast for those of you who don't know, so you guys definitely must check it out. It was one of my best recommendations. There is another question about the fact that digital marketing is such a huge field. How does someone find its way inside of digital marketing? How does someone understand what area of digital marketing is for him and what area isn't?
What do you excel at? Are you better at videos? Are you better at text creation? Are you better at SEO? Are you better at writing? Figure out what you have more natural skills and start with that and just focus. You know, people used to tell you that you can do everything. You can't do everything. I can't be a doctor. I'm not good at it. I don't have the stomach to see the insides of someone or their blood. Like, that's just not me. The point I'm making is focus on what you're naturally better at, because that's what you'll enjoy, and just double down on be the best person at that one thing.
That's a great recommendation. Let's dive into more questions. I'm going to be picking them at random at this point because there are so many, and I don't think it would be fair if we start choosing favorites.
And as a heads up, I have to leave in 2 minutes because I have another call that I can't leave for, sadly, and I do apologize for that. But let's do it. Let's see how many we can get in 2 minutes.
Okay, so this one we already answered. Yes, Neil has a team. Let's go for another one. This one. So you can say her name really quickly and we can move on.
Pranjal, I hope I said it right. And if I didn't, I do apologize. I'm sorry about that.
Okay, let's go for another one. Where do you get the best hashtags for your website or tags for your website? So what are your research tools?
I just use Ubersuggest. I type in keywords related to my content and it'll tell me what's popular, and that's what I use as hashtags.
What amazing content format will Instagram add next? Maybe something similar to Clubhouse. So if you have any predictions for Instagram, how it is going to be developing as a platform, go ahead and share them.
I don't see them adding any new content type in the near future. If Clubhouse gets really, really big, I think they will, but they'll wait to see what happens there. The biggest thing you're going to see Instagram do, and they mentioned this, is roll out an Instagram for kids.
What are the KPIs which are the most important in social media marketing?
It depends. What is it for your business? If it's sales, then it's sales. If it's brand awareness, then it's how many likes and shares and comments and brand recognition you're getting. It varies per business. And it's not just social media, it's all marketing campaigns. It has to be related to what your goals are.
Thank you so much, Neil. It was such a pleasure speaking to you again. Thank you for the opportunity. If we didn't manage to answer any of your questions, sorry about that. I'm going to be uploading this replay on Instagram as well as on my YouTube channel. Neil, do you have any final words?
Thank you guys for coming here today. I really appreciate you guys taking the time. You didn't have to. I hope you have a wonderful weekend and enjoy life for what it is. You know, don't keep focusing on taking pictures and getting that perfect image for Instagram, spending an hour instead of spending some of that time with your parents, your family, your friends. I'm not saying social media is bad. I'm just saying enjoy life for what it is. And sincerely, I really do appreciate you guys taking the time and having me today and being here. Again, you didn't have to, so thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Neil. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you once again for taking the time to join this live. It was a pleasure hosting it. Again, if you have any questions which I personally might help you with, you can send me a DM on Instagram. The replay is going to be added on my Instagram account as well as on my YouTube channel. Link for that is in the bio. And we can actually take the time to do a quick Q&A session for everyone who might be interested to leave their questions in the chat right now. I am free and I am going to be as helpful as possible. So as mentioned, if you guys have any questions, don't be afraid to leave them in the chat right now and I will be answering them as much as possible. Thank you once again to everyone who stick through it. If you don't have any questions, I wish you a fantastic rest of your day. In terms of making a living with an organic traffic, it really depends on what your standards are, as well as what type of content you are producing. For me, it took 1 year. For others, it might take several years. It really depends. What I recommend you doing is setting a 90-day goal from which you don't give up no matter what. And then based on that goal, based on how it goes, you can start repurposing and start aiming higher or lower or give up altogether. Okay, let's dive to the next question. Tips for beginners to grow on social media. My number one tip is mentality tip, not so much nailing the algorithms, but rather understanding what your audience wants, how you can help them with your content and focusing on them, not on you. We humans are extremely self-focused in most cases. We always think about what is good for us, what type of value can we get from others. Whilst it is super important to remember that by giving more than you want, you're always going to be winning. In terms of finding hashtags, I personally use FlickTech. That's a great application for Instagram, which can save you a ton of time in researching your hashtags. In terms of great questions, Hima, the book I'm preparing right now will be live on my Instagram profile next week. I'm super excited for it. If you want to become a digital marketer right now, as we discussed with Neil, first gather up the foundation, spend 1 to 7 days reading books, blogs, videos, etc., understanding what are the best strategies in digital marketing right now by searching for case studies. And then from that point onwards, start implementing as soon as possible. That's my best advice. For hashtags, as mentioned, I use FlickTech. In terms of content you can produce per week, I recommend 1 per day for Instagram. That means 7 content pieces per week, but find what is sustainable and scalable for you and do that. In terms of focusing on the local or international markets, I personally come from a really small country, Bulgaria. Most of you probably don't know it, but I am focusing on the bigger market because for me, that is what my goals are aligned with. If you want a thriving business, if you only want to make an X amount of money with some limitations, but to be able to focus on other areas of your life, then a local market is great. If you don't want some of these limitations, then go for the global market. In terms of the tool, I'm going to be writing it right now. This is the tool which I use for hashtags. For me, Instagram is one of these platforms which, because it has such a huge backing by Facebook and because it is constantly trying to reinvent the wheel and find something else to gather up information about, put on their platform. The last example of that was Instagram Reels, but the fact is that Instagram Lives, Instagram Stories are all taken from other platforms. So the fact that Instagram is willing to experiment and add these new features for me makes Instagram one of the best platforms to choose from in the social media marketing world, right behind YouTube. In terms of the best B2B funnel, for me, if you want to thrive in the B2B market, you need to understand that the decision makers, the people who are actually going to decide if they're going to be doing business with you, are human as well. So finding ways to exploit that, finding ways to bring value to them and trigger, let's say, a reciprocity principle, or finding ways to create the content which isn't boring, because most of the B2B content is super boring, can set you apart and enable you to then, once you got people at the top of the funnel, retarget them with ads and really make a bank on. In terms of LinkedIn being underrated, we talked about this with Neil. The fact that there are a lot more content consumers than content producers on LinkedIn makes it so underrated. For example, for every one person who is making content on LinkedIn, there are 100 people who might be consuming that content. Whilst on Instagram, it might be the other way around. For every one person consuming content, there might be 100 people creating content. Okay, thank you so much for these great questions. I will be answering a couple of more questions. So if you guys have any questions, leave them in the chat box below. In terms of how I create my own carousels, I use Photoshop to create the visuals. I use FreePic to find the images. I use a custom Excel sheet to write the text, and I am finding ideas by FactFox, by researching and benchmarking my competitors, by looking at other social media platforms, for example, YouTube, and keeping myself on top of everything which is happening in my industry. In terms of finding the right talent, I actually did an interview with Chris Doe in which we discussed how to find the right people for your team. You can check the video, link is in my bio. In terms of personal versus company brand, it is all up to you. It really depends on what your goals are. I personally have a personal brand which is acting as the attention funnel, basically bringing in people to my agency, but I haven't built a corporate brand for my agency just because I don't need it. On the other hand, if you want a business which is easily scalable, then personal brands aren't set up for that. So I recommend you running with the corporate branding. Okay. Thank you so much for all the great questions. Thank you so much for all the support that you've given me. It was a real treat. Thank you all again. If you have any other questions for me, go ahead and DM me. Thank you. Bye-bye, guys.